Welcome to Vendetta Sports Media. My name is James Herrick, and today I am here with a film study on UFC double champ Amanda Nunes. And today we're taking a look at Amanda Nunes' film in anticipation of her UFC 289 title fight against Irene Aldana. And if you haven't watched one of these film studies before, the concepts are pretty simple. Basically, what I do is I take a look at some film. I highlight two strengths and two weaknesses. I show you some film, kind of explaining what those strengths and weaknesses are. And then I craft game plans for and against a fighter. So today, obviously, I'll craft the game plan for Nunes and against Nunes. The first strength that we're going to look at in Amanda Nunes' game is her counter hooks. And if you watched Nunes' two fights with Pena, you may have seen this coming. The counter hook played a massive role in these two fights. More specifically, played a big role in her being able to get back in the win column in her second fight against Juliana. So that's kind of what this section is going to focus on, is those counter hooks. And one of the main ways that Nunes uses this counter hook is she'll often use it to counter a jab. So you'll see Pena throw out a jab. Nunes will then go over top of that jab with a right hook. And she can throw that shot from the southpaw or orthodox stance. The Nunes second fight, most of it was southpaw, but there are some examples of orthodox. So we're going to look at some film, kind of show some examples of what I mean by the counter hook, and show some examples of her landing that shot. And then I'm going to come back and discuss that counter hook in a little bit more detail before we move on. These first two clips are just examples, but what I want you to see is that Pena throws a jab and then Nunes comes over the top with a right hand. In the last clip, Nunes was working as a southpaw, and in this clip she shows that she can land that same shot from the orthodox stance as well. Once again, Pena comes forward with a jab. This time around, Nunes gets a little bit more power on that counter because she changes the angle and gets it more to an overhand. Now that we have a baseline example of what the counter hook is, I want to discuss in a little bit more detail of why it is so successful for Amanda Nunes. And the main reason for that is her power. Amanda Nunes has a ton of power, and we'll look at some examples here in a second, but she has a ton of power. And what this counter hook does is it gives her an opportunity to land really powerful shots, and she doesn't have to set them up at all. She can take advantage of what her opponents are giving her. She doesn't have to go out there and set up these strikes. She doesn't have to throw long combinations to land this strike. Instead, she can just take what is given and land a really powerful fight-changing shot. And in a little bit, we're going to talk about some weaknesses and some problems with Amanda's game. But this patient counter hook, I think, is a great example of one of her biggest strengths. And it also counteracts some weaknesses that we're going to talk about later. So now, in terms of film, we're going to look at some examples of when she landed some really fight-changing shots just by being patient and sitting down on this counter hook. And in all fairness, I'm not showing you every example out there because we're running on a time limit here. You know, we'd be here all day if I showed you every example of her landing this shot against Juliana, because she landed a ton of massive power hooks. So just remember, I think I have two or three examples in here of some real powerful hooks, but there are many more from this fight that I could have included. So just keep in mind that we're only going to look at a couple, but there are a ton of different examples of her landing this shot really powerfully in that rematch with Juliana. In this clip, we see Pena aggressively reach for this straight that she's throwing. But since it is so long and so telegraphed, Nunes can see that coming, which lets her sit down on this counter hook that really hurts Juliana. Lastly, in this clip, Pena tries to make this fight a brawl with a massive flurry. But that doesn't work because instead of engaging in the flurry, Nunes uses her power and sits down on one counter to completely stop the pressure of Pena. The second strength that I really want to highlight in Amanda Nunes' game is a throw that she likes to go to when she has her back up against the fence. And in all honesty, this isn't a large part of her game. It isn't something that you'll see her use in every fight. Certainly isn't as big of a staple of her game as, say, the counter hook, for example. But I want to highlight this because I think it is a really solid throw that not a lot of people use or have the ability to use. So I want to look at it. And the reason it is so impressive and almost fight-changing, in my opinion, is because not many fighters that have their back up against the fence in a clinch scenario can really be offensive. some can, whether it be with strikes or whether it be with grappling. But Nunes has a takedown, a throw more specifically, that she can go to and land frequently with her back up against the fence. And this is obviously fight changing because it is a great way to get yourself off the back of the fence, and it is also a great offensive tool where Nunes can land that, and then she's on top and she can start landing elbows because she has really good ground and pound. So this is a really fight-changing way to go from a real defensive position to a real offensive position, and I want to highlight that. So that's what we're going to look at here with this second strength. The throw that Nunes likes to hit starts with her getting an underhook and an overhook. In this clip, on the left side, you can really see her attack the overhook. From there, she steps off to the side of the underhook and hits the throw. The other thing that I want to point out is since this is an offensive position for Spencer, she's throwing knees. And Nunes is able to time one of those knees and hit the throw while Spencer is throwing a knee. This makes the throw easier to land because there is less resistance and less keeping Spencer on her feet. This throw here is slightly different because Nunes has one overhook, and on the opposite side, he's actually just going to grab the elbow and pull in on the elbow. That does help the momentum and help her begin this throw. Still, she's got the underhook stepping out to the side and landing this throw. This time it's on Juliana Pena. It's time to talk about weaknesses, and the first weakness that I want to discuss in Amanda Nunes' game is how she approaches the boxing range. And more specifically, sometimes she will either A, enter boxing range without throwing shots, or B, she will hang around in boxing range for too long. And basically what that means is, usually you want to enter boxing range with a strike, a feint, something to kind of, you don't just want to enter a place where you can get hit without hitting your opponent or setting something up, takedown, whatever it may be. There's times where Amanda Nunes will just go from being at a range where she can't get hit to just walking into range where now she can be hit. And I've got a really good example against Juliana Pena where she kind of looks a little hesitant to throw. She looks a little hesitant. And that hesitancy ends up in her putting herself in a position where she can be hit. And all she did was walk herself into position and allow Juliana to land some shots on her. And then she will also just hang around for too long. So let's just say, for example, Nunes lands a strike. She will just sit in boxing range and won't leave and won't attempt to play the little game of hit and not get hit. There's a lot of times where Nunes will hit and then get hit, which sometimes that works out well for her because she usually hits harder, but it really becomes an issue when you're just kind of sitting there and standing in boxing range and you're repeatedly getting hit because she doesn't have the best defensive fundamentals in the pocket, but it wouldn't be such an issue if she didn't sit in boxing range for so long. So we're going to look at one pretty strong example of a time where she just sat in boxing range and got hit badly. Once again, she usually gets away with this because of her power, but it is still a weakness, and it is something that Juliana Pena used to find success in their fight, specifically their first fight and the fight that she won. So we're going to look at some examples of some times that Nunes was really punished for her tendencies of entering and staying in boxing range for too long. I just want you to see here how Pena enters the pocket, and she's kind of hesitant and doesn't throw a strike, and Pena responds with a combo of her own, but a more experienced striker could really make Nunes pay here. What I want to point out here is that we see Pena land an early jab, and she kind of understands where the range is. The problem is that Nunes then proceeds to sit in that range while Juliana is throwing a flurry of shots, and they're all landing and landing hard. And Nunes is not able to get Pena out of her face until she then returns with a big shot of her own. And the final flaw that we're going to look at in Amanda Nunes' game is some flaws in her kicks, right? Now, I want to be clear that I don't think Amanda Nunes has bad kicks, right? She has very good kicks. She kicks hard. She has a semi-diverse set of kicks, right? She isn't going to be out here throwing spinning wheel kicks, but she does have some kicks to her, fairly diverse leg kick, several body kicks, some head kicks, right? She's good at kicking, but there are issues, right? And the two big issues that I noticed with Nunes when she throws kicks is the first is that she will throw from a little bit too close, right? She'll be a little bit too close, and then her opponents can counter with shots, right? So there's a couple examples of her throwing a leg kick or throwing a teep or throwing an oblique kick from boxing range. And then that allows her opponent to, counter with a jab, with a straight. Also, the second issue is that she can telegraph her kick. Sometimes she'll try to throw a kick really, really hard, which not a bad thing, really. But Nunes does it without really setting up kicks. You'll just be standing face to face, and then Nunes will throw a leg kick as hard as possible. Like I said, some people do that really well. Justin Gaethje is the expert of that. Problem is that a lot of times Nunes doesn't set up those strikes as well as you would like. So fighters can either avoid that or once again counter with some offensive strikes if they can predict it and step into those leg kicks and land punches while they're being thrown. So we're going to look at some examples of those two issues within her kick game. Once again, as a whole, her kicks are not bad, but these are two of the bigger flaws, maybe even the only flaws in her kick game. So that's what we're going to look at in this specific weakness. In this clip, Pena and Nunes are exchanging punches, and then Nunes is a little bit too close and she throws this teep. That allows Pena just to step outside of that teep and then throw a 1-2 that clips Nunes. This is a very similar example where Nunes throws that teep from close, Pena steps outside, lands a shot afterwards. In this clip, Nunes winds up with a leg kick, and since she winds up, Pena sees it coming. She's able to get that front leg out of the way. She returns with a jab that lands and a straight that misses. Once again, a better striker probably makes Nunes pay for this. Once again, Nunes winds up with the leg kick. This time, Pena softly lands a straight behind it. This is the final example, but in this one, Nunes steps in with an oblique kick, and Pena meets her with a stiff jab. All right, we've entered the game planning part of the video, and the job is now to craft a game plan for Amanda Nunes to win a fight. And before we get into the specifics, I just want to say that this is not fight specific, right? This is specific to Amanda Nunes and meant to be applicable to any fight, right? This isn't supposed to be, what she should do against Irene Aldana. That way these videos can be used in more than one fight, and you kind of look back on this in a more general sense, not a more specific sense against one fighter. So just wanted to acknowledge that before we get into the specifics of what Nunes needs to do. So now, in the specifics, the very first thing that I want to see from Nunes in a game plan is prioritizing precision and patience. And what I mean by that is really in the striking. I don't want Nunes to go all out or get over aggressive and hunt knockouts. I think that can be really damaging for her. And I think a strong example is basically the two fights against Juliana Pena. When you look at the first fight, Nunes, got a little desperate and started hunting knockouts. She got a little desperate and over-reliant on that power. And she wanted to land the big shot to put out Juliana. And she was landing big shots, and they weren't putting out Juliana. And she was not landing, that much. She only landed a handful of shots. Meanwhile, Juliana was really pressuring her with a lot of strikes. And that mix of pressure on one side and kind of the over-aggressive throwing everything at 100% from Nunes resulted in Nunes getting tired and really just basically running out of cardio in the second round. And she got finished in the second round by Juliana Pena, who, all respect meant to Juliana, Nunes is a much better fighter, much more technical fighter. So when you look at the second fight, she is much more patient, right? We looked at a lot of examples of her landing that counter shot that and several counter shots that dropped Juliana, right? And that's her being a lot more patient, her waiting for the opportunities and taking advantage of those opportunities when they come. And I don't think that should be specific to a fight with Pena. I think that should be utilized in all her fights, right? I think she should keep that mindset of being patient in landing the power shots that really hurt fighters. With that being said, it doesn't have to be the counter hook, right? She has a really good 1-2 that's hurt a lot of fighters. Think her fight with Megan Anderson. She really hurt Megan with I believe it was a 1-2, but the two behind it was definitely what hurt Megan. So patience in landing those big shots and not getting over aggressive, not sitting in the pocket winging shots, not doing some of these less technical things, right? Staying within the technique and landing the powerful shots, I think should be a key focus for Amanda Nunes in any fight that she has. Now, moving on to probably the second pillar I would kind of categorize here in a game plan, but I also want to see her mix in takedowns. Nunes, I think, when she is balancing power strikes on the feet and takedowns, I think she can be very difficult to deal with, because that kind of diversity in attack can make it harder to defend, right? That's really no secret. If you're landing takedowns, you're going to open up some strikes for yourself on the feet. I think that should be a focus. But what I really like from Nunes, and the real reason I wanted to throw this in here in part of the game plan, was because I love her elbows from top. Nunes is great at kind of controlling position on top in creating opportunities to land some massive slicing elbows. So I want to see Nunes, land these takedowns just so that she can get on top and land elbows. And the amount of damage that she does with elbows is, one, it's crucial to winning fights, but two, if you can cut up your opponent, cut him on the eyebrow, cut him on the forehead, blood running down the face, makes it harder to strike. So I really want to see her incorporate that into her game, and I think that probably is something that she will look to do in the future and probably consistently at this point in her career. One other small thing is mix up the boxing combinations. I think at times Nunes doesn't really use all of her boxing skills. I think she's a little bit better of a boxer than she shows. Her combinations are kind of one-dimensional. Like I said, the 1-2, she's got a good counter hook. She's got a strong jab. She uses some of these tools, but I'd like to see her kind of mix up her combinations a little bit more. And in moments when she does, she looks good. I believe it was one of the Pena fights. She landed a good uppercut hook combo. And it's like, I'd like to see things like that more often and help you become a little bit less predictable in your strikes. I think that would only help her, and it is just another small thing that I'd also kind of throw in here that I think is important. But overall, kind of looking at this in total, I want to see Nunes be more precise, be more patient, mix in takedowns, and be aggressive with ground and pound when she lands those takedowns. Those are kind of the most important things, personally, I think, when crafting a game plan for Amanda Nunes to win a fight. All right, it is time to craft a game plan against Amanda Nunes and for how to beat Amanda Nunes. And, a year ago, I probably told you that this was really, really difficult and almost impossible, but Juliana Pena exposed a lot of flaws and made this a little bit easier than it otherwise would be. So I think the first thing that we have to start with is on the feet, you have to take advantage of what Nunes is giving you. Nunes, is not perfect on the feet, and she will leave, holes. She isn't the best defensive striker, right? So, if you're in a boxing combination and she starts showing some flaws, she's not covering her chin, she's not utilizing head movement, you have to punish her in those moments, right? We talked about the leg kicks earlier, where she is throwing the leg kick from boxing range and it's a little bit telegraphed, and you can step in and land a 1-2 in those moments, right? If she is hanging around a boxing range and just standing there in your face, punish her for that. Punch her in those moments, right? So you kind of have to take what Nunes gives you, because Nunes will give you opportunities. The problem is that some people are afraid of the power or afraid of the aura presented by Amanda Nunes, where she can stand there in boxing range and she doesn't get punished, or she can make mistakes and she doesn't get punished because her opponents are not active enough. They do not want to get hit. You cannot fight like that against Amanda Nunes. You have to take advantage of every opportunity that you're given, and she will give you opportunities to land, so you have to capitalize on them. Now, I also want to see fighters attack the body, right? And the reason for that is we saw her gas in the first fight with Pena. Cardio looked much better in the second fight, but she gassed, and when she gassed, as much as it sucks to say, she then did quit, right? So attack the body, try and make her tired. I think this would probably be better done with punches. I think that is definitely more risky than kicks, but I say punches to the body. I think it would make more sense to throw boxing combinations that go to the head and body, and the reason for that is because when you're doing that, once, like I said earlier, get her tired, but B, you can start to get her to drop those hands, and then you can start to attack to the head. But I say punches over kicks, just because when you throw kicks to the body, they can get caught, and you don't really want to have that kick caught and then end up on your back and start eating elbows. So I think the punches to the body are a little bit less risky in this scenario. Like I said, you still have to deal with the power of Nunes, but scared money don't make money. So you got to throw those shots and try and get her hurt to the body. Similar thought process, leg kicks, right? Try and land some leg kicks, because Nunes has a lot of power in her hands, but if you can start to break down that base, make it so she doesn't have a leg to plant off of, and kind of hurt her ability to really plant and throw, I think that is very beneficial and could be a good way to kind of tax some of that power and make that power coming back your way not be as strong. If you can beat up those legs, and you're going to have to beat up those legs early in the first, second, third round, doesn't do you any good if it's the fifth round and you start winging leg kicks. So early in that fight, throw body shots and throw leg kicks. Last piece of advice that I would throw out there when looking at a game plan is, obviously you want to defend takedowns. You don't want to get taken down. That's not, regardless of who the fighter you're fighting is, you never want to get taken down. Specifically against Nunes, though, if you do get taken down, work back to the feet, right? You don't want to hang around with your on your back, because then you're eating elbows. So work to get up. Nunes will attempt submissions, but a lot of times her submissions are like, she likes some arm triangles. I think she has a guillotine on her record. I have to go through the specific submissions again, but she isn't a prolific finisher with submissions. So, she's also aggressive, right? So since she's aggressive from the top position, you can look to get your feet on the hips, off the back, push off, stand up, right? There's things you can do, but you need to be aggressive to get up, right? Because sitting there on your back doesn't do you any good against any fighter, but specifically against Nunes, you're not just losing a round, you're losing a round and getting your face pounded in with elbows, so it's even worse, right? So as for Nunes, I said to get the takedown only on elbows. On the flip side, that means if you're fighting her, defend takedowns. If you do get taken down, get up. Don't hang around on your back. So that would be my advice as to how you should game plan to beat Amanda Nunes. Thank you so much for tuning into this film study on Amanda Nunes. I hope you learned something, whether it be about Nunes, whether it be about fighting in general or game planning. I hope you learned something. Also, if you're excited for UFC 289 and enjoyed this film study, we also have a Charles Oliveira film study in the bank that was done in preparation for his fight with Islam Makhachev. So it is not the most updated thing you'll see, but obviously a large portion of his career was looked at in that film study. So check out that. Also check out vendettasportsmedia.com. Not just UFC content on there. Every single sport, basically. This right now, NBA season, NBA finals, NBA draft, some summer NFL stuff, but just about every single sport need that you want is covered at Vendetta. So go to make sure you go check out vendettasportsmedia.com. Last thing before we get out of here, subscribe to the YouTube and like as well. But most importantly, thank you for watching this film study on Amanda Nunes, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.